Hey folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board. Tonight I actually want to talk a little bit about a conversation that's been going on around the character of Vampirella and some of Chuck Dixon's comments on writing her. Now, I'm not an expert on Vampirella. I actually don't know much more about her than you can find. Well, I don't even know as much as you can find on Wikipedia because I haven't looked her up there. Mostly, I just know what I've picked up through following discussions over the last couple of days, and also, occasionally hearing her brought up by some of my friends who have been into American comic books for longer than I've been able to afford it. And by and large, from my position of ignorance, she doesn't seem like a particularly deep character. And I've never been interested in learning any more about her. I mean, she's got a respectable amount of TNA going on, and that's about it as far as I can tell. There's probably a lot more to it than that, and if anybody ever sees this video, there will probably be some people who bust down my comments to explain to me exactly what there is about Vampirella beyond that, and that's fine. But by and large, this video is more inspired by one of the things Chuck Dixon said in his recent interview. This has nothing to do with the controversy that's come up over that interview, by the way. It's interesting, I suppose, but not really what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is Dixon's comment that he wasn't going to change her classic costume, that the costume was a major part of her character. And I thought that was interesting. I thought it was very interesting because I tend not to think of costumes as necessary to a character. Although if you think about it, obviously costumes carry a lot of weight. Look at some of the classic Hanna-Barbera cartoons, for example. You can very easily pick out, say, the Scooby-Doo gang by what they wear, and what they wear kind of points towards who they are. Velma is the quirky one who dresses outside the mainstream. Daphne is a bit of an airhead who is so she's kind of a stereotype, let's put it that way. Of course, Fred is a go-get-em, so he dresses in a vaguely sailor-like uniform to kind of suggest his capabilities. He could be a Navy man or some other competent, very focused professional, which is what sailors tend to be even back in the 70s. Of course, Shaggy is a stoner, and he dresses like one. He dresses like a hippie, and his hair is shaggy, as his name kind of implies. Well, Scooby is a Great Dane, and nothing about his design says anything beyond that, really. But for most of those characters, there's a pretty clear identity that their costumes back up. And I suppose this could also be true of Vampirella. Her costume kind of suggests that she's a libertine. And by that I mean she's someone who is quite free with her physical affection and her sexuality. And that is kind of implied just by the cut of the costume and the amount of skin she shows. Now, I know that there are people out there who like to pretend that you can just, show as much skin as you want, and that doesn't necessarily have to have a sexual connotation to it. And those people are wrong. It can have other connotations to it, but when you're showing skin in a human society, it is always going to have a sexual component to it. And while Vampirella's character design is, she is an alien, of course, her character was designed by humans and for human consumption, and therefore is going to speak to humans through the language of human instinct. And when you show a ton of skin, when your costume clearly puts your sexual assets on display, it is a sexual costume, and it therefore follows that Vampirella is probably going to be a sexual character. Now, before I get too far into this, I should point out that Vampirella's costume is substantially different from those of for example, female superheroes, which tend not to have overtly sexualized costumes. You may be wondering, how can I say that? I mean, most female superheroes are dressed in skin-tight outfits. Are they not? And the answer is, well, not always. Look at Supergirl. The classic Supergirl design was dressed very much as a female tennis player. Ditto for the original Wonder Woman costume. They both had that kind of tennis skirt going on, a kind of a blouse that lets you move your arms freely, much like a tennis player. It spoke to the populace of the time very much as a athletic woman's wear. You also see that, by the way, in the design of male superheroes at the time, which were patterned after the strongmen of circuses. This implied a different kind of athleticism, granted, and just like the costumes of strongmen in the circus, it does kind of emphasize their physically attractive features, their upper body strength and the like. But primarily, their costumes were designed to evoke the dress of people in everyday life who are doing extremely physical things. And so you continue to see that in superhero character designs through the ages. If you look at, someone like the Punisher, a more modern character, he tends to be displayed kind of like a biker or a construction worker. He wears a t-shirt and jeans and, whatever tactical gear he needs to carry all of his weapons. And again, that spoke in the time he created of a fairly physically active person. And if you look, sorry about my phone there. If you look at some of the more recent female characters, let's take, for example, Jessica Cruz. She looks very much like a person in a gymnastics outfit. Again, a very physical, physically intensive occupation, but not necessarily a sexualized one. In contrast, Vampirella her outfit is almost not an outfit. It is clearly designed to put her physical assets on display and to evoke something more like a burlesque dancer. And that's fine. What does it tell us about the character? Well, it tells us she probably does not value modesty very highly. She clearly is not afraid of her sexuality, and she will put it out there, most likely in order to get what she wants. That's generally why you display your sexuality, as a sign that you are ready to put it to use. So the question that then follows is, do you need to show a person in this costume in order to get that part of their character across? And I think the answer in comics is yes. Yeah, you actually kind of do. It's a visual medium. If you were writing a movie or a novel or a song, there are a bunch of different ways. You could include dialogue, you could include internal monologues, you could put in a voiceover, you could do all these different things to show that a person dressed in a normal way is a sexually active, maybe even sexually predatory person. But in a comic, your word real estate is actually quite limited. I would say your average comic, words of spoken dialogue are probably not going to top 2,000 words. It's actually probably going to be less than half that most of the time, assuming you're doing one of your fairly typical 20 to 22 page monthly rags, as opposed to a 100-page graphic novel. Then you're going to have more words. But in your typical 20 to 22 pages, there are not going to be that many words. And conveying things like sexual activity, a sexually predatory nature, visually is going to be difficult to do for a couple of reasons. If you're going to do it subtly, you require a very good artist. I couldn't do it, straight up. There are a lot of artists out there who probably couldn't do it. And if you're going to do it blatantly, well, your book's going to have a bunch of other problems. So the fastest way to get that across is simply to make it a permanent part of the character design. And so, you know, it was interesting to go through this mental exercise. Is there really no other way to get Vampirella's, that aspect of Vampirella's character across in a comic book other than this wildly outlandish costume? And I think after thinking it over, I've actually come to the conclusion that the answer is no. At least not in a way that upholds the medium. And I know that, you know, it's very easy to just say comic books are a visual medium, and therefore everything about a character should be shown visually, or at least all the important things about a character should be shown visually. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Part of the fun of comic books is what you show visually, what you don't show visually, what you do through your characters' actions as opposed to the way they're designed, how they dress, how they carry themselves. At the same time, when it comes to talking about our characters, how they appear in a comic format is one of our most powerful ways of communicating about them. And if we change the way they appear, we change who they are much more than we would, say, in a movie, say in a novel, in a TV show. So I think that, you know, on the whole, I think that attempts to argue that Priest was wrong are going to fall flat for the simple fact that, yeah, this is the fastest way to communicate an integral part of the character. And of course, there are all the other factors that stack on top of that. Vampirella is an extraterrestrial. Her culture is just like this. And, you know, you can say that should be enough. Well, yeah, it should be enough. But it's important to think through all the aspects of an argument. And really, honestly, to be perfectly blunt, in argumentation, there is no such thing as enough. The more you have, the better. So yeah, I enjoyed the mental exercise. I hope you've enjoyed walking through it with me. And that's about all I got for tonight. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, there's a like button, a subscribe button down below. Use them as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.